I don't know, man. It's been green lately. It's weird. It's not like I've had a lot of sugar or anything. All right, so we are back with another Drive Across 65, Season 1, Episode 8. Last week we covered our college picks, which turned out to be pretty cool because about 2 days later, Stanford Steve and the Bear posted their ACC predictions, and their ideas lined up pretty closely with ours, man. So either we're all geniuses or we're all idiots, right?
Yeah, and I tend to believe I'm a genius, but I've proven myself wrong on occasion in the past. But when it comes to picking sports, we usually go on the side of genius, I think.
So this week we're going to do some fantasy draft, some preps.
Yeah, we're going to just be taking a look and giving you a little preview of the fantasy season. We're not going to do a mock draft. Everyone does mock drafts. Just want to talk about values of certain players, especially those you're going to be keeping an eye on for most of the season.
Right. So before we get to that, let's get a little topical. So the Cowboys had a triple in their first preseason game. Do you know what a triple is?
A triple. Did they turn the ball over 4 times and punt 3 times in the same quarter?
So they had over 100 yards receiving, over 100 yards rushing, over 100 yards passing. Can you guess what the fourth was?
Return yards.
Over 100 yards in penalties.
I should have known that. Boo.
The Ravens stayed undefeated.
You know, it's funny. The last time the Ravens lost a preseason game was 1991. That makes it seem completely impossible because they only exist as a franchise since 1996. So these guys just don't lose in the preseason.
It's the competitive nature, man. It's crazy. Also, some news coming out of baseball. First of all, we're back on a hot streak again. Our daily picks, I refused. I said I absolutely was not going to do daily picks anymore. And then I kept doing daily picks, and we're on fire right now.
Well, you know, the board spoke to you. I love what you have to say all the time about how if the board doesn't talk to you, sit it out. That doesn't mean, and the same thing is true in the other direction. Don't not look at the board, assuming you're not going to find anything. You looked at the board, you found some stuff, you let it rip, and you're killing it.
Speaking of some things that got found, that was an excellent segue.
That was absolutely perfect.
So, Fernando Tatis Jr., we're not going to talk about. It's a story I don't want to talk about, so we're not going to talk about it. But Fernando Tatis Jr. Got some steroids found in his system. So here's the interesting thing about it. So the steroid that he was taking to treat quote unquote ringworm. I did a deep dive onto Twitter MD, and all of the Twitter don't stop me. All the Twitter experts said that what he was taking, which is spelled CLOSTEBOL, was one letter away, the letter A away, from being what you could actually treat ringworm with, which I thought those guys are super smart. So let me just go off on the Padres for a second, okay? We're going to be honest about it. I've talked about it on Twitter already. They were not going to win the World Series this year. They had a stud lineup. They picked up one boy from Washington. What's his name?
Juan Soto.
Tom Soto. So they picked up a stud lineup. They picked up Drury from the Reds. They were looking really good. They still don't have pitching. Okay, so the World Series odds improved substantially once they picked up Juan Soto. They weren't going to get to the World Series. What I thought they might happen was if they strengthen up their lineup, they could pick up a free agent pitcher, somebody ring chasing, maybe like a Max Scherzer situation going to the Mets this year, and have a real shot at winning the World Series next year. The lineup they got is definitely going to cause some problems for teams in the West when it gets closer to playoffs, but they're not going to win this year. His 80-game suspension is interesting. I don't think it was much warranted. Let me tell you why. Let me ask you why. What is the minimum home run that you would cheer for? What's the minimum feat?
Well, you know, it's all ballpark dependent. There's going to be some places where even maybe slightly under 300 will get you a home run. But I'd say on average, a short home run, 330 feet.
Okay. So let me ask you this question. What is the difference between a ball going 333 and a ball going 440?
Well, about 100 feet to answer you literally. But at the same time, a 340-foot home run hit another 100 feet is just as much as a home run.
I miss the steroid era. Just let him play, man. It's not going to make a difference. He's still going to go a yard. He's still going to climb the ladder to make stops at shortstop. The only difference is he's not going to have ringworm while he's doing it. I mean, that's the only difference.
Yeah, I mean, steroids is a touchy topic and it can go on for a long time, but the idea is if everybody's on steroids and no one has an advantage, right?
I miss the steroid era. So back to NFL. I was watching Hard Knocks, and I have a question for you, Pete.
Yes.
When do the playoffs start, or when is Week 18 in the NFL?
Week 18 is in early January. I'd say whatever that Sunday is, the 8th. Just going off the top of my head.
Okay, that's really weird because Dan Campbell said that pre-training camp that is the best that their body is going to feel until March. So I'm assuming that he's saying from the beginning of January till March is how long they're going to have to recover.
Or he's super confident that thinks they're going to the Super Bowl, which will be played the second Sunday of February.
That is an that's cute moment from Dan Campbell because there's, you know what I mean? Like, it's cool to motivate them, but saying that their bodies aren't going to feel good until March when their last game is going to be beginning of January is insane.
So I guess he thinks he's going to put them through the ringer.
Also, I have in my notes. I just wrote Julio.
Julio who? Julio Rodriguez? Julio Jones, my buddy. So it looks like that Julio is very much on track to be on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roster in Week 1. Russell Gage did get hurt in the preseason, and had that been any kind of serious injury, that would have been the absolute end of that prediction. It just looks like Chris Godwin's not going to be ready to go. It looks like they're not going to put him on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. But at the very least, he's going to be limited. So, yeah, Julio's probably not going to just be out there Week 1. He's probably going to be starting.
Do you have any other sad news you'd like to discuss before we dive into the fantasy projections?
I hate to share my infinite sadness, but we haven't talked about soccer on this pod.
Football,
European football, however you want to call it. As a child, I met my aunt and uncle for the first time when they came to visit us from Manchester, England. And they got me into a little soccer team some people may have heard of called Manchester United. And this was before they really blew up and became the global brand they are now. But I've been a Manchester United fan that whole time. And you don't have to be a soccer fan to have heard of them. You've probably heard of David Beckham. He played for Manchester United. You've probably heard of Cristiano Ronaldo. He did and now currently does play for Manchester United. They have started this new season so poorly, it's making me cry a little bit. The best equivalent I can give you is if Alabama opened up the SEC and lost at home to Missouri in a game they never really were in control of. Then they went to Tennessee and got absolutely splattered the very next week. That's no fun.
I'm so glad you said that because I had no idea. I couldn't wrap my head around the context of man, you lost. Why that's a big deal. Now I get it. Alabama losing those two teams, the world is on top of the 10.
Yeah, and as of right now, the Premier League season is 2 weeks old. A lot to go, but as of right now, Manchester United sits in 20th place out of 20 teams. So hasn't been fun to be a United fan lately, and the worst part is that Liverpool and Manchester City, their two biggest rivals, are the two dominant teams in the world. So, yeah, we are not just kid brother. We're redheaded ginger brother at this point.
And if you thought that our palette wasn't that big, we just talked about soccer for a solid 3 minutes.
Something close to that. And we can actually talk about soccer as people are interested in it. We can drop some nuggets in it here and there. Right now, bet against Manchester United. They're playing Liverpool this week. That's not going to be pretty. That's an avert your eyes if you're a United fan type of situation.
So we did the episode on player props, the futures with Pete picks. And you suggested we do a fantasy show. What are we going to look forward to? What's going to be the difference between Pete's picks and the fantasy projection show?
Yeah, those Pete picks were centered on specific stats by specific players and whether or not they would reach those milestones or not. And in essence, they are similar. We're looking at accomplishments in a statistical standpoint, which translates into fantasy. The reason we're talking about fantasy, and if this wasn't the case, then we wouldn't be talking about it at all, because almost all, if not nearly all, fantasy football play is for money. And we're here to make you money. And fantasy football, a lot of people don't play one league. They play several leagues. And if you can cash out in all of those, that's just as good as cashing a bet at the sports book.
All right, so I'm going to lead off with the first question. Are we going standard or PPR?
The majority of fantasy football drafts or leagues are played in PPR. So we're going to do that when warranted. We'll mention guys who might have a bonus in a non-PPR situation. So obviously PPR stands for points per reception, and it benefits guys who catch shorter passes, running backs who are involved in the running game. So you got a guy, this is a little bit of a spoiler, we got a guy like Derrick Henry who might not catch a lot of passes. His PPR ranking is lower. And when we talk about him, we'll be like, if you're in a standard non-PPR league, give Henry a boost a little bit in his rankings.
So while we're on the subject, I cannot wait to take a back seat to this one, like similar to what I did with Pete's picks. I'm going to sit back. I'm going to pop open my Diet Lemonade from Chick-fil-A. Not a sponsor yet. We're looking forward to them potentially being.
Hello, guys.
Yeah. They have a whole bowl. I mean, they could sponsor us. That'd be cool. I'm going to cry a little bit for a second about one of my fantasy lineups from last year. So I went through a couple running backs from the Cleveland Browns. Both got hurt. I went through 3 tight ends, Dawson Knox, Rob Tunyon, and some guy with the last name Arnold. I'm not even sure where he played for. He was like the only available tight end.
I think he got traded mid-season. I think it was a Cardinal, went to the Jaguars.
I had Amari Cooper. Pretty sure he got hurt at some point last year. I had Patrick Mahomes. Okay, I had Patrick Mahomes on my team. I lost the game by 1 point. He had 3 interceptions in the game. He doesn't throw 1 interception, I win the game. I ran so bad during my fantasy league last year.
And that's going to happen, unfortunately. The idea in most fantasy leagues is just when you're playing that week, score more points than your opponent. You don't have necessarily the better team than him, but score more points that week, and you move on.
Can absolutely not wait. So, like I said, I'm going to take a back seat to this one, and I'm going to let Pete take off. Pete starts off.
Okay, so we are going to be looking at ADP, which is average draft position. And we're going to use FantasyPros. The reason we use them is because they do a conglomerate of everybody else. So everything I'm going to reference is going to be with them. That said, these things change. So any numbers we might provide today, later today, might be slightly different as draft rankings come in, as mock drafts come in, and the like. Somebody who was ranked 15th today might be 16th tomorrow. They're not going to necessarily drop to 40th.
Also, I mean, even injuries, not even to the players, but like to the offensive linemen and whatnot. Like, didn't the center from the Buccaneers just get hurt?
Well, Brian Jensen got hurt, and then his backup, Robert Hainsey, got hurt. So, yeah, all that matters.
That's definitely going to affect productivity from Tom Brady, from Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans. I mean, although just that center getting hurt, the offensive line being a little shaky is going to have a ripple effect on the rest of the roster.
Yeah, especially at the center spot. Absolutely agreed. So we're going to break this down into some sections, and the first thing we're going to do is take a look at the overall top 15 as brought to you by FantasyPros. And again, this is PPR. So start off right at number 1. Their number 1 ranked player is not the same guy who's ranked number 1 in standard. Is Carolina Panthers running back Christian McCaffrey. And he is ahead of Jonathan Taylor at number 2, Indianapolis Colts running back. If you look at standard, it's flipped the other way. So between those two guys, who do you think you'd rather have on your team?
So as far as draft projections, you got to go Jonathan Taylor, right? You got to think that he's going to be healthy and stay on the field more frequently than McCaffrey. And you're kind of rolling the dice on the injury of McCaffrey, right?
You are rolling the dice, and there's going to be an element of that in every fantasy draft. But we're talking about the number 1 overall pick. And that's a tough place for me to go with. As we all know how good McCaffrey is, especially as a receiver on top of his running ability. A healthy Christian McCaffrey with a slightly better offensive line this year would be the number one pick. Can you put those eggs in that basket?
Especially not, you got to think of the quarterback aspect too. We know who's throwing to Jonathan Taylor. Whoever's going to throw in McCaffrey's kind of still a question mark, really.
It is. You would think it's Baker Mayfield, but that's a fun staff. That role seems to be an interesting fella, and who knows what he's going to do. He might even have McCaffrey playing quarterback at some point. So looking at that 1 and 2 spot, we got McCaffrey 1, Taylor 2. I ride with Taylor. Looking at the next group of players is 3 running backs. We've got at number 3, Austin Eckler with the Chargers. At number 4, Dalvin Cook with Minnesota Vikings. And a slightly surprising number 5 here is Najee Harris with Pittsburgh. What do you think of those guys?
So if I'm inclined, I'm definitely going to roll Dalvin Cook because I definitely believe that the Vikings new head coach is going to have an offensive mind. I think there's got to be more chemistry built between Cousins and Cook at this point. And like I said, it's going to be an offensive-driven team. Najee Harris, he's definitely going to take a lot of handoffs out of the backfield, right?
He's the guy in that backfield. There's no question. And he's shown he can be a bit of a receiver.
And Eckler, you got to think he's going to get his numbers, but there's a question with his health too, right?
A reasonable amount of questions on there. And Dalvin Cook's the guy who's, I don't think, ever played an entire season, every single game of the season. Running backs get hurt. There's no question about it. I actually kind of like the ranking here. Eckler, to me, is even more someone I'd rather have than McCaffrey at this point. He's the guy in that backfield. I know they drafted Isaiah Spiller this year. He might come in and do some spelling. Maybe he's Isaiah Speller. Oh, that is just gold. Najee, I don't trust the team as much. That holds him back for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to either have an ex-Chicago Bears quarterback that got cut that was a backup last year, or a rookie, or a backup coming out of the Steelers, right? I mean, that's hard to put your money on right now.
Exactly. So that's the top 5. Number 6 and 7 are 2 wide receivers, and let me quiz everyone in the audience and Josh as well. I'm going to list them alphabetically: Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. Which one does FantasyPros have ranked higher?
Oh, I feel like this is a trick question. All right, so this is us versus the sportsbook right now. So the obvious pick is Cooper Kupp because of all his accolades going from last year, right?
Yeah, Triple Crown winner, led the league in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns.
So what we're going to do is reverse psychology this, and we're going to go Justin Jefferson.
You big brain that one. Justin Jefferson is ranked higher than Cooper Kupp. Now, Justin Jefferson is an absolute monster. There's no question about that. Since coming into the league, he leads the league in receiving yards. Or yards per reception. He leads the league. And if he sees more opportunities, then that's even better for him. It's a coin flip with those two. It really is. If you have the pick and you're facing a decision between Jefferson and Kupp, it's going to be based on what you're looking for. If you're looking for super consistency, go with Kupp. If you're looking for the guy who can explode and single-handedly win your game for you that week, go with Jefferson.
Yeah, and you got to think that the Rams are going to rely heavily on A.J. Rose just in that season. I don't know if you saw in the preseason game, but he did score a touchdown. The Vikings did not utilize him to his full potential, and I think he's getting recognition this year.
A.J. Rose for fantasy football MVP.
I mean, at least a dynasty pick, right? The kid's good, man. He's going to be around a good offense.
If you have a deep dynasty roster, you can do worse than stashing him. Number 8, Derrick Henry, Titans, and he is ranked higher in standard leagues, of course. We've talked about Henry. He's an injury concern, even though last year was the first time it really creeped up. But we're down on the Titans offense this year. Derrick Henry with the 8th overall pick in a PPR league sounds a little rich for me.
Right. So, I mean, it does. You got to think he's going to carry most of the workload too, which will eventually probably lead into injury. Where else did the Titans get? Talk me out of taking Henry. Where else did the Titans get offense from?
I mean, last year it was basically ran through Derrick Henry, and then their top 2 wide receivers were A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. I do believe they both needed help from moving companies this offseason. They are no longer there. They imported Robert Woods. They drafted Treylon Burks. They may be experimenting with a rookie quarterback at some point in the season, and I think Malik Willis is going to be a good in this league, but I don't think that year is this year.
So you said you were down on the Titans, or obviously we're both down on the Titans. Is there a world where Derrick Henry can get his numbers and the Titans still suck?
Yeah, if they're in some close games, they're not. I mean, we don't see them as the worst team in the league by any means, so we don't imagine they're going to be falling behind in every game and abandoning the run game. They're going to feed him the ball as long as he's available. And we question, and it's a little bit of a projection here, which is what all this is, of course. We're projecting him not to be healthy for 17 games this year.
And you just dropped some big brain knowledge right there. And I was hoping you didn't get to it, Pete. You did it beautifully. So what just happened? We just assumed that the Titans weren't going to win this year, that they were going to have to be playing from behind. In order to play from behind, you're likely going to be throwing the ball. You're going to throw it to Derrick Henry? Probably not.
Not at the extent that you would throw it to someone like Alvin Kamara or Dalvin Cook or Austin Eckler for sure. Next on the list is at number 9. He is ranked number 9. He is the only tight end in the top 15. He is Travis Kelce. Josh, I know you have thoughts on Kelce this season.
I don't know if we talked about it or not, but there is no way I'm taking Kelce at number 1 tight end. Now, if we look next year or at the end of the year back at it, and he's leading all tight ends, and I put my foot in my mouth, that's fine. But I'm telling you guys, I'm not sold on him having the production that he's had in the past.
And it's even fair to consider him the number 1 tight end despite all that. But number 9 overall, as if you have the 9th pick in the draft, it would be a good decision, according to these rankings, to use that pick on Travis Kelce. While we got some names on the board that we still have to look at here, that's rich.
I mean, I feel like there's a tight end that plays for the Falcons that I would have just because he's essentially their only option. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Rob Tonyan, I know he got hurt last year, but him and Aaron Rodgers have way more chemistry built. You know what I mean? Than what people are giving credit for. Now, obviously, Mahomes and Kelce have been around each other a ton, but I don't see Mahomes getting a third or fourth look at, there's Kelce standing wide open because Cheetah's all in the end zone with 5 people around him. You know what I mean?
Yep, Cheetah's gone now. So, yeah, Kelce obviously is going to produce. He's going to put up numbers. But the idea that he's going to put up typical Travis Kelce numbers is a little bit of a stretch for us. And number 9 overall is really tough.
So give me. Like, I just named 2, right? Well, I said the tight end from the Falcons. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Give me. Microphone down. Microphone. All right, so we just had to take a 30-second timeout because the microphone almost killed Pete's toe.
I'm okay, I think.
So that was exciting. I mean, that was, if anybody's still listening and their ears aren't ringing after the big collapse, it wasn't an earthquake. That was just Pete's stomach grumbling. No, I'm just kidding. So the microphone fell. We are back, though, guys. So where are we at, Pete?
So we were talking about Travis Kelce and Kyle Pitts, how Pitts will give you similar production without necessarily having to spend that kind of draft capital on him.
Right, yeah. And I love Travis Kelce as a player. I think he's a funny guy. I could say all kinds of nice things about him. I don't want to take him as my number 1 tight end or as a top 10.
Yeah, I'm not taking him 9th overall. I could take him as my number 1 tight end in the later round, absolutely. But I'm going to use that precious draft capital on something else. And speaking of someone else you could spend that draft capital on, coming in at number 10 is a bit of a high hope pick. We got DeAndre Swift, running back of the Detroit Lions. I guess the idea with him is that he's going to be the guy in that backfield. He's shared with Jamal Williams in the past. The other hope there is that he's going to be healthy. He has missed some time as well. Running backs are going to miss time. But the Lions offense, and we talked about Dan Campbell's idea that they're not going to be feeling good late in the season. Not sure how we want DeAndre Swift performing for us late in the season when the fantasy playoffs are going on.
Another side step, guys. So far in the past 4 minutes, we've had a microphone fall and a party foul. My phone just went off. What is going on with this production crew today, guy? Like, what are we doing here? Is this even like a real? Is this a real show right now?
This is the real life. It's not just fantasy.
All right, and keeping with Swift. So I didn't do any research prior to the show. No, I'm just kidding. So didn't he get hurt in the Thanksgiving game last year? Because I feel like I had money on that, and I may have lost after he got hurt.
That sounds right. He didn't miss time last year. I actually wound up in my fantasy football championship game having to start Craig Reynolds, who is Detroit's who he is a third string.
We're only really eight episodes in, and Pete already read the Who coming out.
He's third string. I mean, he didn't even fourth string with Detroit. It's just I didn't have Swift last year, but I had other injury concerns and just had to go out and get somebody to start. He got me like less than 5 points, maybe 5 points. That just tells you Swift was out. Jamal Williams is out. So 10th overall for Swift is a little risky, I'd say. We are high on some players, I promise you. Next up at 11 and 12 are a pair of Bengals. At 11 is Joe Mixon, and at 12 is Jamar Chase. Doesn't that seem reverse?
It does. It is pretty interesting, but I know during our AFC North breakdown, you were mentioning that Mixon coming, or maybe during his receiving breakdown, that you were mentioning that Mixon is a threat to come out of the backfield and catch the balls, correct?
A little bit, but they seem to trust Samaje Perine with that more. Just look no further than the final drive of the Super Bowl. Who was on the field in a must-pass situation? It wasn't Joe Mixon. It was Samaje Perine.
Makes sense. So, out of the two, which one are you taking out of that Bengals roster?
If I had to pick, and I had to pick one of those guys, I'd take Chase. Even though I'm more of a running back guy, Chase has proven, it's only been a season, but he's proven what he can do in this league. And a lot of people would have made that same excuse last year for Justin Jefferson. And anyone who bought that excuse was proven wrong pretty quickly.
Right, yeah. And Justin Jefferson never said preseason that he couldn't see the white on the balls, and that's why he couldn't catch them, which was pretty interesting.
That is pretty interesting, yes. So they were numbers 11 and 12. Number 13 is a Buffalo Bills, Stephon Diggs, as a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 4 on these rankings. And that sounds accurate. You're looking at the 13th picks. If you're in a 12-team league, he would be either your last pick in the first round or your first pick in the second round. If you're in a 10-team league, he would be the third pick of the second round. That value sounds pretty strong.
Yeah, I'm a big Diggs. Big Diggs. Wow, that could have gone really bad.
That could have gone bad, but it didn't.
Yeah. Say your words. I'm high on him. I probably would have put him ahead of a couple of guys we mentioned. I feel like I would have taken him ahead of Mixon, at least, especially the PPR.
And in the emergence of a wide receiver next to him, like Gabriel Davis, who scored about 15 touchdowns in that game against Kansas City last year. For really scored 4, which is amazing. Some people might think that would hurt Diggs because Davis would demand more attention. I'm the opposite way. I think if Davis can prove a threat, that provides less opportunities to double team Diggs. And he beat you one-on-one. He will beat you one-on-one, and you'll see the irony is his receptions might not be as high. He'll break bigger plays, and with those come touchdowns.
And you can almost kind of mirror it with the layout of the Chiefs the past couple of years with you think the Cheetah's going to get majority. I got to start saying his name because I just keep saying Cheetah like everybody knows.
He's Cheetah. Cheetah.
So, what's his name?
His name's Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that guy. So you would think that it kind of mirrors the Chiefs' offense. Like you could play Knox as your Travis Kelce, and then you had, you know what I mean? It's gonna drag eyes off of Diggs, right?
Exactly. All right, closing out Fantasy Pros top 15 are a pair of former teammates.
I'm not really sold on you exactly right there. I don't think that you believe me what I was saying.
I believe you. I'm with you on that. The slight difference might be is that Kelsey's an inline tight end type player, whereas Davis and Diggs are both outside threats. But the concept is there.
And Dawson Knox.
Dawson Knox is pretty good. He's
all-time name too.
It's a great name. Yeah, he could have been an extra on Dukes of Hazzard. I think that's for sure. I know everybody loves my super old references. A pair of former teammates coming in at number 14 and 15. Devontae Adams at 14, former Packer, current Raider, and Aaron Jones, current Packer. What do you think of those guys? I know you like Adams.
I'm not sold on the Aaron connection right now. I don't believe in it.
Aaron Jones has A.J. Dillon in the backfield with him. A.J. Dillon is a threat to take away 1-yard, 2-yard touchdown runs, also known as very affectionately around these parts as a vulture back. And Jones will catch the ball. He will be involved in the offense all the time. And it's been shown over the last 2 or 3 years that offense runs more efficiently when Aaron Jones is on the field. And the Packers coaching staff, they're analytically bent. They know these things, and they're going to keep Jones on the field. It's a mid-second round pick if we're talking about a 10-team league. Early second round pick if you're talking about a 12-team league. And if you're somehow in a 14-team league, it's a very late or very late first, very early second round pick. I can live with that.
Yeah, and I'm going to take Devontae Adams.
Adams is going to get one of the biggest stats for fantasy wide receivers. It's not catches, yards, or touchdowns. It's targets.
Yeah.
He's going to be a target monster.
Oh,
no
yeah,
question.
sure.
He always has been.
Yeah.
And in an offense that might even be more dependent on him. Their number 2 wide receiver is Hunter Renfrow. Very nice player. Decent PPR value. But outside of that, I don't know much to look at as far as wide receivers go.
I'm not going to stay here for the slander. You're not going to keep talking about the Raiders not being good.
Anyway, all right. So that's the top 15.
Anyway, me like an ex-wife. What's happening?
I do have one of those, surprisingly, just one. We're going to look at some players outside the top 15 now. We're going to look at pairs of players. One would say is overvalued as far as their ADP goes, and one who is undervalued. And we're going to start with a pair of teammates. St. Louis Chargers wide receivers, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen is rated number 23, and Mike Williams is rated 44. Keenan Allen is the overvalued player in this situation, whereas Mike Williams is the undervalued. I can almost switch those rankings and have it work out. Now, Keenan Allen's going to catch probably more passes than him. Let's say Keenan Allen catches 90 passes this year. Let's say Mike Williams catches 75. That's a difference of 15. That's 1 point a game, essentially. Nothing to sneeze at. But who's the threat? Who's the guy that Herbert's going to look to if he needs a jump ball situation in the end zone? Who's the guy that Justin Herbert's going to look to for a big play? Mike Williams is severely underrated here. Late 4th round pick value, give you back 2nd round pick type production.
Yeah, and Keenan Allen's name, too. I think that's going to throw a lot of people. You know what I mean? It's just a more well-known name compared to this kind of part.
Exactly. Next up, we have a pair of running backs who are in different situations now. James Conner, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, number 31 ADP. Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Leonard Fournette, number 18 ADP. Fournette's being undervalued here. Conner obviously was good last season. He scored a bunch of touchdowns. Can you count on that kind of production repeating? Whereas in the other sense, Leonard Fournette was very successful last season without the stats to show for it as far as touchdowns go. Now, we know Tampa Bay or anybody who's coaching Tom Brady, they're going to make sure he gets plenty of 1-yard touchdown passes to boost those numbers. But when it comes down to it, Fournette gets you that yard. And with a new head coach over there now, Todd Bowles, he may be more inclined just to take whatever he can get as far as points. And turning around and handing the ball up to Leonard Fournette, you can do a lot worse than that.
I wish I could argue with you, but I agree with everything you just said.
So Fournette, number 18, I would draft Fournette in the 1st round. If it's late 1st round and some of my stronger options aren't there, you can do worse than Fournette. Next, we have a pair of wide receivers who are new faces in new places. Coming in first with a number 56 ADP is Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown of the Arizona Cardinals. And number 22, Tyreek Hill, a cheetah, at Miami at number 22.
It is insane that Hollywood Brown is getting mentioned this late because he's been so high in so many draft boards in the past. He was Lamar's number 1 target for forever.
He was, and he may potentially start the season off with Arizona as a number 1 target. We all know that DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for the first 6 games.
This is not going to turn into Tua slander. I swear, Pete, they've already gone down on the Raiders. You're not going to tell me that Tyreek's not going to get his numbers just because I took your side on the other guy.
And you're right. I'm not going to do that to you this time. I think Hollywood is the overvalued player here, and Tyreek's the undervalued player. Hollywood is an interesting guy. If he comes out and he balls out a little bit in the first month of the season, that's a classic sell high situation. Find somebody who thinks that's sustainable, get some value for him in a trade, and then watch DeAndre Hopkins come back and eat into his production. Tyreek at number 22 He's actually listed as wide receiver number 8. You can't sleep on that kind of talent. I mean, we're not going to say Tua is a bad quarterback, but we're certainly not going to put him on the higher echelon of the league either. But you find ways to get Tyreek the ball. And he is the one guy in this league who was a threat at any point in the field, at any part of the field, to wind up in the end zone.
All right, so funny story about DeAndre Hopkins. I was watching, again, Hard Knocks, super fan. And their in-season coverage is going to be on the Cardinals. They're going to do Hard Knocks in-season on the Cardinals. And it was DeAndre Hopkins working out. I was kind of like, read the room, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is he? I mean, I guess 6 weeks suspension. He'll probably be back in time for the recording. But that was a really, really weird player for them to highlight. Being as he is suspended to start the season.
And with Marquise Brown, you always have concerns with the drop C's. And he showed that a lot last year. If you had him in that one game, I wish I could remember who they were playing, but I think he dropped 3 touchdown passes in that game.
I had him on my roster.
I think you did.
Yep.
Okay. Next up, we have another pair of running backs facing differing circumstances, even though they appear similar. Denver Broncos running back Javonte Williams, second-year player, number 25 overall, running back 13, and Chase Edmonds for the Miami Dolphins once again, running back number 26 and number 69 overall. Chase Edmonds is getting dissed here.
Yeah, and I can hop on the Dolphins train as much as I want to, but I can't just back every player on the team because somebody's not going to get their production.
Yeah, absolutely. But when you look at a situation like Denver, so there's situations I was talking about. Denver has Melvin Gordon, and Miami has Raheem Mostert. The idea is that there's going to be more of a split backfield in both of those situations. The consensus based on this ranking is that Javonte will have less of a share than Edmonds, and I think the opposite's going to happen. I'm not convinced on Mostert, and I understand if he's not there, Myles Gaskin is there. They've got some guys they can give the ball to, but Edmonds fits what Mike McDaniel wants to do, and we all know how much we love Mike McDaniel.
I freaking love that guy.
We love Mike McDaniel.
I can't wait for the slide for him to have a little joint in his mouth.
It's going. Yeah, you see, they're looking at it right now, actually. Awesome. That's for our YouTube listeners right there.
Speaking of, so I keep sidestepping this show, man, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. YouTube is full of haters, okay? So let me tell you what's going on with our YouTube side right now, okay? So we're posting daily picks, right? Some of the views will get 10 or 12. Or we'll get 10 or 12 views on some of the videos. Some of them get around the 500 range, which is cool. I understand there's an algorithm and whatnot. Let me tell you what these haters are doing right now, okay? So I'll have 2 games. We've been on a heater lately. We did hit a tough spot after All-Star break, okay? I'll have 2 games back-to-back, 1 winner, 1 loser. They'll both have over 500 views. Cool. We just want the exposure. We want everybody to know that we're out here and we're giving out picks. We're trying to help you make money. That's fine. Why are my losers getting 526 and the winners are getting 520 views? Like, it's just they're inching me every time on these views, okay? Then I turn around. Last 3 picks we've had, been on the heater lately, guys. Shout out to us. 5 combined views, period. Why doesn't YouTube want the people to win?
That's a great question. It's a big faceless corporation type situation, maybe. They're smarter than they look, though.
Back to the, sorry about the rating, guys.
No, that's okay. We're going to look at another pair of running backs here whose careers, I think, are heading in opposite directions. You have Devin Singletary, Buffalo Bills, number 81 overall, his running back 33, and Miles Sanders, Philadelphia Eagles, 70th overall, RB 27. I think the idea is that both of these guys are hitting a downturn, and I don't think that's true for Sanders. I think Singletary will wind up potentially as a number 3 choice in Buffalo. If James Cook emerges as the starter, as we expect him to do, Zach Moss still fills that role as his backup. It's not like Zach Moss gets pushed down to 3 and Singletary gets pushed down to 2. In an injury situation, that might happen. But in the change of pace type situation, who's going to get those gritty yards? That's still going to be Zach Moss. So if Cook takes over that job, Singletary gets pushed out completely. And
we're going to go over-under on how many quarterback vultures we're going to have too, man, because it's probably going to be sick.
That's going to be the problem, yeah, especially with Sanders and Jalen Hurts taking in some rushing touchdowns as well. But RB27 in a 12-team league. You're considering Miles Sanders a high-end backup or a flex. No, I want him as my RB2. And if the draft shakes out a certain way, he may even be your RB1. That would mean you're loaded at other positions. He's not an ideal RB1, but he can play like one from time to time. I think he's highly undervalued. Up next, we have a pair of wide receivers. Deontay Johnson is number 33 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, wide receiver number 15. Then we have Michael Thomas at number 62 for the New Orleans Saints, wide receiver 28. We know what the problem with Michael Thomas has been lately, his availability. But he's back. He seems motivated, and that was a problem with him early on. The motivation was a question. He's motivated now. If he's looking at this, he's being told you are not a weekly starter in a PPR league. And this is a guy that has the NFL record for most receptions in a season.
Which is insane because you're also telling him that a wide receiver who doesn't have an established quarterback is going to have more production.
Much more, and is considered an entire tier better than you. And now we're not here to hate on Deontay Johnson. We think he's fine. But 33 is way too high. To be 2.5 rounds better than Michael Thomas is a little mind-boggling. Okay, I got to do this to you. Next up, we have a pair of running backs who are ranked side by side in the rankings. At number 51 is Las Vegas Raiders running back Josh Jacobs. And at number 52 is Baltimore Ravens quarterback J.K. Dobbins. Very minimal difference between the two, according to these rankings.
What did you just say J.K. Dobbins was?
Baltimore Ravens running back.
Okay. I thought you said quarterback. And I may have misheard. That's fine.
I may have said quarterback.
Okay. He might need to. Lamar might get hurt. That's fine. If you said running back, we'll hear it back. If you said running back, my apologies. I heard quarterback, and it just shocked me.
It's all good. So I've mentioned in P-Picks what I think about Josh Jacobs this year. He's not going to keep the job. We had him under 800 yards rushing for the season. That's not the type of running back that you want to take in the early 5th round. I would fade Josh Jacobs till about round 9. And J.K. Dobbins didn't play last year. He wasn't healthy, but he's still young. When you're that young, he's probably 24, 25, third year in the league. He bounced back from his injury a lot better than, let's say, a 30, 31-year-old running back that's not named Adrian Peterson would be able to do. So I think Dobbins is undervalued here, not drastically. I'm not telling you to take him in the 2nd round, but high 5th round, I think he should be off the board. Jacobs, on the other hand, that's maybe early in the season if you're doing daily fantasy. Take a couple stabs at him if his value is low, if his purchase price is low. But no, I don't want him. I
I mean, it hurts me to say, but as far as the two players, like you said, we are going to go with Dobbins. You can look at it at the angle of you're not going to see Derek Carr take off from the 1 or 2 yard line and vulture touchdown there. So, I mean, there could be an angle to play there, picking up Jacobs over Dobbins maybe and trying to reach for such straws or something to make it sound good.
Yeah, with Lamar Jackson being, I think even we can say this at this point, the greatest running quarterback.
You just say it again!
I jumped up now. The greatest running quarterback in league history. It's not a stretch to say that, even though he's only been in the league a handful of years now. The stuff he does running the ball is ridiculous. I mean, the only person I'm more scared of the football in his hand is Tyreek Hill, and he plays quarterback, and he has led the league in passing touchdowns before. We love Lamar in these parts, but I'd much rather have Dobbins. Again, I think he's undervalued, not to a criminal extent, but for him to be actually ranked one spot lower than Josh Jacobs, major head scratcher. Last guys we're going to look at here are a pair of running backs who have in the past been in consideration for, at the very least, a top 5 pick, or maybe even number 1 overall pick in fantasy. We have Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Cowboys running back, whose ranking is now down to 32, running back 16, and Alvin Kamara, at number 19, running back 12. That is too high for Zeke. I'll explain why in a second, and way too low for Kamara.
Absolutely too low for Kamara. Jeez Louise, what's going on?
So part of that is the idea that he was going to potentially face a suspension this season. The news has been out for about 3 or 4 days, and that's unlikely to come down this season. So I expected his ranking to go back up. It did not. I guess there's still some fear. If he does get suspended, it probably at maximum 4 games.
Oh,
And he had the incident in Vegas.
the nightclub fight.
Yeah, but that's not gonna take him out for any extended period of time. And again, we need to reiterate, the news has been coming out that any potential suspension he's going to face will not be this season. We're looking at 2023 when that happens.
Right. So if you think that Kamara's not going to carry the workload, I guess you can play that angle. But I mean, he's going to have 3 quarterbacks to choose from that's going to throw him the ball. One of those 3 guys are going to get him the ball. He's going to be one of their options, him and Michael Thomas, right?
And he's never been a big workload guy to begin with, and he's always coming in as a top 3, top 4, top 5 running back. This is PPR we're talking about here. He's going to catch 80 passes this year out of the backfield. That's like an additional 50 yards a game. That's value. If he's sitting there at number 19 and I'm drafting, he's sitting there, I'm going to sprain my ankle running up to put his name on the board.
Right, yeah. And speaking of spraining ankles, Ezekiel Elliott, not very high on him this year. I mean, he's been a name. I mean, he's with the Cowboys organization, and they have a huge fan base, so he's always going to be a name. I'm not sold, man. I haven't been sold. Same with Saquon Barkley. You know what I mean? Like those are just 2 running backs that carry a huge name that just don't have heavy production. Give me Alvin Kamara all day.
Yeah, and you know, in fairness, Zeke is ranked 13 spots lower than Kamara, and we still consider him overvalued. That offensive line is not what it used to be. Tony Pollard's breathing down his neck. If Zeke gets the fumbleitis again this season like he had last year, I won't be surprised to see Pollard either in a timeshare or maybe even in a slight favor where he would get 16 carries and Zeke gets 12. There's too much risk with Zeke. And we're talking about mid-second round value as displayed here, but I wouldn't even take him then.
Yeah, and it's crazy because Zeke's been first round, early round pick for a lot of people for the past couple of years, and it's not like he's aged. You know what I mean? He's just not been productive.
Right. Okay, so we're going to shift our focus here and take a look at some quarterbacks individually. Quarterbacks are tough to compare to other players, just based on how. Here's the thing with quarterbacks: they outscore everybody. But that said, they're not drafted as high, and we'll explain why. But we're just going to run down the top 15. We're going to touch on each of them a little bit. We're not going to go into extreme detail unless we need to. A lot of these guys are pretty much ranked where they need to be. And then we're going to look at 3 guys outside the top 15 that might produce more value than you would expect. So coming in number 1 is Josh Allen. He throws the ball, he runs the ball, no big surprise. The surprise here is 2 and 3. Justin Herbert at 2 and Patrick Mahomes at 3. I think a lot of people are looking at Mahomes and saying he's going to be the same guy he was last year, which for him was a down year. I'd rather have Mahomes than Herbert, but you can't go wrong with either one. Next, we have 3 guys who are much more known for running the ball than throwing the ball, which is, of course, super valuable in fantasy. Number 4, Lamar Jackson. Number 5, Kyler Murray. And number 6, Jalen Hurts. So that helps me with my Jalen Hurts. Love to see him up there. Next, we have 2 proper pocket passers. Number 7 is Joe Burrow. And number 8 is Tom Brady. Seems fine there. Number 9, we have guys who are number 9 and 10 guys who will run the ball a little bit, but not to the extent of the other guys. Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson. Dak being ahead of Russell Wilson doesn't really fly with me. I'd rather have Russ.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna have to carry a lot of the team this year, I believe, in scoring. I mean, we're down on the Cowboys running backs, obviously, but I don't think Dak's gonna have as much production as Wilson at all.
Next up is the defending Super Bowl champion starting quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Number 11, consistent guy. He throws a lot of interceptions, comparatively speaking. He threw 16 last year, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it tied for the NFL lead, so you lose points there. Here's the wild card at number 12, 49er quarterback Trey Lance. He is either going to produce much better than that number 12 spot or much below it.
He did his thing preseason. Obviously, I know it's preseason, but he did his thing.
So behind him is Aaron Rodgers. And here's the interesting thing about that. Aaron Rodgers is QB 13. In a 12-team league, that makes him the most valuable backup quarterback in fantasy football. Who are you starting ahead of Aaron Rodgers minus these absolute upper echelon guys?
If ask that question. First of all, Mahomes being top 3 was asinine to me, especially since I had him on my team last year and he threw all his interceptions and didn't win me any games. I would definitely say that there's an easy way we could swap Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes and not bat an eye and have Mahomes as a upper echelon backup quarterback.
Well, that's a hot take, folks. We're going to close out the top 15 with Josh's guys. Number 14 is Kirk Cousins, and number 15 is Derek Carr. Tell me why that should be in the top 12.
Because they're going to the Super Bowl.
That is his pick. And 3 guys outside the top 15 that can provide you some decent, maybe not necessarily top 3, top 4 level return. But number 18 is Trevor Lawrence.
Awesome one, Josh's guys.
Yeah, we are very high on the Jags this year, and we think Lawrence is going to be a major part of that. He did throw a lot of interceptions last year. He was a rookie. Peyton Manning led the league in interceptions his rookie season and never came close to that number again. So we see Lawrence on a turnaround this year.
All right, that's even hotter take. Trevor Lawrence is the next Peyton Manning.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, that is an absolute possibility. Manning did have more overall production in his rookie year, but he also had Marvin Harrison. And he did not have that. Trevor Lawrence did not have anything like that in his rookie year. He also had to deal with Urban Meyer as his head coach. Number 19 quarterback, Jameis Winston. We're not saying he's going to set the world on fire, but he's at worst to me a spot starter. In the right situation against the right opponent, you can start him. That to me brings better value than the number 19 quarterback.
Or Andy Dalton, who will be the other starter. Or whoever else it
might be. Wrapping up quarterbacks with a guy who everyone hates, I don't, is Carson Wentz. He is ranked at QB 25. That means if in a 12-team fantasy league, if everybody has 2 quarterbacks, Wentz isn't even rosterable. That's a stretch to me.
I'm taking Winston over Wentz.
Winston over Wentz is fair, but I think Wentz, if you hold back on drafting a quarterback and you're filling out your other positions and you wind up with Carson Wentz, you can pair him with someone else, you can have a weekly starter out of that. I think Wentz provides a little bit more value than everyone realizes.
Hot take.
All right, now we're going to take a look at some sleeper picks. And this is slightly different than looking at guys who are undervalued, because these are people who are being projected at like the 8th round level or lower. And it was my ultimate goal to keep this outside of the top 100 overall, but guy coming in at number 96, he's got to be mentioned. We're talking about another Jaguar player, Christian Kirk, coming over from the Arizona Cardinals, where his usage wasn't as high as it will be in Jacksonville. He is being slotted as wide receiver 40. No way. We're talking about a 4th-string guy who's going to act like a starter on most weeks. He's going to crack 1,000 yards. His touchdowns might not be super high, but he is not going to produce at a level like a wide receiver 4.
I'm definitely writing that down. Christian Kirk, pick him up late somewhere that nobody else sees him coming. Boom, you're going to win your league.
Yeah, he can be a league winner for you, absolutely, because while someone else is taking someone who is a number 4 wide receiver, you're taking a guy who's starting for you. Next up, even though we're a little bit down on the Steelers offense, number 105 is Pat Freiermuth, their tight end. First of all, great name.
Oh, I mean, all-time name. Football name.
Yeah.
1,000% Freiermuth. Freiermuth with the touchdown, yeah.
Either football or Robin Hood. I mean, one of the two. So he's coming in at tight end number 10. So he's expected to be a low-level starter. So that's good. But, in an offense that struggles with a quarterback who's not known to push the ball down the field, who's he looking at? What position is he throwing the ball to? He's throwing it to the tight end.
Right.
And Freiermuth was a rookie last year. We expect him to be better this year, so that's a low number for him. Another sleeper is a guy we talked about in Pete's picks, wide receiver for the New England Patriots, Jacoby Myers. He comes in at number 117 overall, wide receiver 48, borderline wide receiver 5. And he could be the top receiver on a team that's going to be challenging for the playoffs.
So we're saying, like, on a team where you have a bye week and your 2 starters are both out is when you're going to pick up Jacoby Myers according to the stats that you have out.
Unless you can find a better option, is what they're saying, and
right.
that's not what we see him. Next up is a tricky sleeper pick. Actually, the next 2 are tricky sleeper picks because they're both rookies. and both in slightly different situations. Coming in at number 125 and 126 at wide receivers in the 50s for sure is Alec Pierce, rookie wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, and Sky Moore, rookie wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't know what to expect from rookies, but I think these guys both produced this year.
But how do you not pick up a guy named Sky Moore?
Another great all-time name, absolutely. So because they're rookies, it's tricky, and we're going to talk about both of them when we get to our dynasty section. But keep an eye on those guys. I wouldn't necessarily count on them as starters, but I would draft them higher than they're being displayed based on that potential. Especially Sky Moore in that offense. If the offense winds up being a typical Kansas City Chiefs style offense, he's going to see some numbers. He's not going to necessarily put up 80 catches, 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. But you don't need that from a guy you're drafting in the 8th, 9th round.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in Mahomes, he can find you those diamonds in the roughs for sure.
Next up, a guy from the Dallas Cowboys is Michael Gallup, who was their wide receiver 2 this year with Amari Cooper gone. He is the undisputed wide receiver number 2. CeeDee Lamb's the guy there. No question about it. They have a decent tight end in Dalton Schultz. So you expect Gallup to be ranked among the 30s, 40s as a wide receiver. He is ranked wide receiver 58.
Wow.
That is insane. He is not rosterable almost, according to this. And health is an issue, but he is going to provide much more return on his draft status than that would indicate.
Absolutely. So we're not going to give the ball to Zeke. Like you said, Cooper's gone. A, B, C, D, Lamb. He's going to have a lot of eyes on him. I love Michael Gallup in that position. Take him as a sleeper for sure.
Next up, another rookie, Tyler Algier, running back for the Atlanta Falcons. He is listed as running back 51. He will produce as running back 51 or worse if he doesn't see the field. Cordarrelle Patterson is the starting running back for the Atlanta Falcons. He wasn't even a running back 2 years ago. Mike Davis as primary backup is gone. There is every opportunity in this Falcons offense. It won't be a high-flying offense, but there's every opportunity that he becomes the primary ball carrier. I'm going to gamble on him doing that and take him higher than his draft position suggests.
And that pick right there is exactly why we did the show. Not that specific pick, but because you're just big braining it. You're seeing angles that a lot of people aren't seeing, man. I love it.
Thank you. And Patterson, for a running back, is old. He's in his early 30s. Even though Atlanta's offense isn't necessarily high-flying, if you're the main ball carrier in any offense, you have fantasy value.
Absolutely. And not only that, but you got to think that they're going to be getting blown out some games, right? I mean, they're likely to lose a lot of games. What do you do to run the clock out?
You give the ball to your running back, who's not necessarily your primary starter, and even early in the season, he might provide a little bit of return in that regard.
See?
Last two guys are a couple wide receivers who are in good offenses who get overshadowed. We're not saying they're going to be the stars of their teams, but you got a guy, Van Jefferson, for the Los Angeles Rams, KJ Osborne in Minnesota. Van Jefferson is wide receiver number 67, and KJ Osborne is wide receiver number 73. Osborne could potentially eat into Adam Thielen's production this season. As Thielen, who has been a great guy, we love watching him. White Claw, great nickname as we mentioned.
White Claw, love it.
He's not getting any younger. He's still producing. We're not saying he's dropping off the map, but Osborne, who was good last year, could continue to eat into that production. Much more high on Van Jefferson. We've already talked about Allen Robinson in previous casts being not as good as the hype coming in. I can see Van Jefferson as the legitimate number 2 wide receiver in that offense.
Absolutely. And just to step back on the Vikings, if my theory is correct on them needing to produce more points, if you get 6 touchdowns a game out of this team, 5 touchdowns a game, it's going to be spread out. They're not going to go for the Thielen when they could. You know what I mean? It's going to be definitely divvied out.
Yeah, absolutely. Some deeper sleepers here. Guys that I think can emerge as contributors who aren't being drafted as such. Dameon Pierce, rookie running back, Houston Texans. A guy I could see taking over that backfield. He's got Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead in front of him. That sounds like a fantasy team you wanted to run out about 7 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Texans fan, and I have no idea who any of those people are.
Adam Troutman, tight end for the New Orleans Saints, not really known as a receiving threat at this point in his career, but he can emerge. He's tight end 28 right now, which is saying don't draft him at all. He can find a role in that offense, absolutely. Sammy Watkins, bigger name than player at this point. He is ranked number 270 overall. He's considered undraftable. He's got Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. I'll take a flyer on him at some point in the draft, or at the very least keep an eye on him early in the season on the waiver wire. Matt Breida, Saquon Barkley's backup, speaking of Barkley. Barkley probably gets hurt at some point this season. Matt Breida is an upgrade over Devontae Booker. Devontae Booker was Saquon Barkley's backup last year. When he was the starting running back for the Giants, he was a fantasy starter.
Yeah, and definitely bookmark this spot. I love that take that eventually you're gonna have to pick up the Giants backup as a filler spot. It's gonna be him, and Saquon's gonna get hurt, and you're gonna win your league.
Yep. And here's the deepest of sleepers. We're going to a guy who's ranked number 309. He's got a great name, Diane Brown, wide receiver for the for the Commanders, and someone's got to be that number two wide receiver behind Terry McLaurin, and I think everyone assumes it's going to be Jahan Dotson, and I think at some point it will be, but early in the season, you never know who it might be, and I'll take a chance with my last pick in the draft before I pick a kicker. I'll take Diane Brown.
Smart.
All right, guys, we're going to take a look at a brief look at some Dynasty players. I know a lot of you people don't play Dynasty, might not even know what it is. It's basically the ultimate keeper league. You keep all your players year to year until such time that you cut them or trade them or they retire, which at what point you would cut them.
it's like literally being a general manager.
Right. So quarterback was tough this year. Only one went in the first round, and he's not even the guy we're going to look at here. We like Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder in similar situations, guys who were drafted behind other guys who were not going to. I was going to call them both stopgaps. Ryan Tannehill's not a stopgap at this point. Marcus Mariota is. But Tannehill's probably not long for that team. And the thing with Malik Willis is he should have been a first-round pick. Very, very similar situation to Russell Wilson, who probably had the talent to be a first-round pick, got shunned into the third round, and became an immediate starter. Not seeing the same with Willis, but as far as the immediacy goes, but we can see him becoming a Russell Wilson caliber player, and that's a guy you started every week. The other guy was an undrafted quarterback. That's Carson Strong, another kind of great football name, He went to Philadelphia. Now, we don't see him unseating Jalen Hurts at any point, but Hurts can potentially implode. It can happen, and we've seen undrafted quarterbacks become the best quarterback of their draft class. Kurt Warner, Tony Romo, and those were in leagues. Those were years where the draft wasn't strong at quarterback as it was this year. So Carson Strong, he may not do it with Philly. He may go somewhere else, but as a dynasty stash, it's good times. Running back, some of these are pretty obvious. With James Cook, can't go wrong with him. We talked about Dameon Pierce. He'd be a good guy to have in dynasty league as well. But a little bit deeper into the abyss here, Zamir White, Las Vegas Raiders. The job could be his as early as this season. If not, it would be next season.
You've got to stop killing Josh Jacobs. You have to.
He's already dead.
You went over him with the bus, but you keep backing up, bro, and that's rude.
Yeah, well, he can kick my butt, so I'm not going to say this to his face. Another guy with the last name Strong, Pierre Strong, running back, New England Patriots. Damian Harris isn't my concern with him. Ramondre Stevenson is. Damian Harris is one of those typical Belichick-type running backs. Get him in the middle of the round, the middle rounds of the NFL draft, pound him for a few years, and then move on with him. Stevenson may be better than that. And if he is, then the Pierre Strong pick becomes a little less able to lean on that. But he is going to be the explosive guy in that offense. As soon as this season, you might be looking at a stat line, Pierre Strong, 3 carries, 55 yards, 1 touchdown. Because he lost a yard, he had a 57-yard touchdown run. So keep an eye on him. And the last running back, Treston Ebner. Who is Treston Ebner? He is on the Chicago Bears. We're not big Dave Montgomery fans necessarily this season. Khalil Herbert is a thing, but as early as next season, you can see the name Tristan Ebner providing value for you. Looking at five receivers very quickly. David Bell, Cleveland Browns, could be the number 2 receivers over this season. They lost Odell. They've lost Landry. They picked up Amari Cooper. They've got Anthony Schwartz from last year's draft. Hasn't done anything. I wouldn't be surprised for him not to be a Brown next year. So David Bell, look for him. Christian Watson, Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers likes his second-round picks. He's made a lot of money over the years. Watson's going to be one of those guys too. Alec Pierce, the Colts, we've talked about him. Some under-the-radar names, Kyle Phillips, Tennessee Titans. Not this season, but he could be a starting wide receiver for them next year. See a lot of Darnell Mooney in him. And then Bo Melton, a 7th-round pick, has a seasonal ranking of 482 as far as ADP goes for redraft leagues. Seattle Seahawks have 2 wide receivers who are starters, absolute starters, and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Who's the next guy? It could be him in a wide receiver 3 spot next season, providing you value for a very late pick. Bo Melton out of Rutgers. Tight end. I love Jelani Woods. He is a Indianapolis Colt this season. I can see him, and this is a big projection, I can see him having a Jimmy Graham type career. Jimmy Graham was at one point tight end number 1, first-round pick value. This guy has got all the talent.
Pete, you're deep diver, like your encyclopedia, like just player stats, rounds, starts, like what team played for who, what college and why. I mean, it is fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I can't remember basic things about life sometimes, but this stuff stays with me. 2 more tight ends. Remember, these are dynasty stashes. John Bates, Washington Commanders. Logan Thomas, probably not much longer for the NFL. Had a nice career transitioning from quarterback. He's beat up, and wouldn't be surprised to see John Bates as their starter next year. And the fun one from the Tennessee Titans, again, this is for next season. I'm going to have to read his name off. Chigozium Okonkwo. I think I nailed it.
I couldn't have done any worse. That makes you feel any better.
So, yeah, keep an eye on him. Tennessee's tight end situation has been very fluid lately. If he can stabilize it, then he'd be the guy. All right, we want to end the show off with some general advice about fantasy. And you've probably heard a lot of this stuff lately, but we want to reiterate it. Number 1, and this is a big one, not everyone follows it, you'll want to wait before you draft your kicker, your defense, maybe even your quarterback. Yes, there are better kickers than others. Justin Tucker is a great kicker, but through no fault of his own, he can only score you 4 points in this game because the Ravens offense struggled for most of the day and then bang, 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 scored 4 touchdowns. Kickers are essentially a dime a dozen. You can swap them out week to week based on matchups. Don't draft a kicker too high. Second to last round is the earliest I'd do it. Defense, yeah, Buffalo's defense, San Francisco's defense, the Rams' defense, they get a lot of love in fantasy rankings. You never know what they're going to do week to week. And do you really want to start the 49ers defense against Arizona, who maybe is not a good team, but will score points? So there's one there. Next up is that you want to know your league system. Obviously, you want to know the scoring system. You want to know the starting lineup configuration. You want to know if you get bonus points for long touchdowns. All these things matter.
Yeah, we had a pretty lengthy discussion going into this about should we do standard or PPR, what kind of scoring we should really base the show around. And the more research I've done, the more people I've talked to, man, PPR is just it's running the league. So it's running the fantasy league. So obviously, standard on ESPN is going to be PPR. That's what when you sign up, that's usually you have to change it to standard in order to go a different direction. But nevertheless, just keep an eye on it. Make sure you know what kind of scoring system you're in.
And even PPR can sometimes be half PPR, HPPR. This is getting out of running all the acronyms out there. That's only half a point per reception. So that cuts the value down a little bit. So always know all those things. If you're on an online league, they will be posted in the settings. So make sure you read those, especially before you draft. Don't go crazy with handcuffs. Now, what's a handcuff? I draft Saquon Barkley, but I'm concerned about his ability to stay healthy, but I want the production that he would otherwise have. So I, at some point later in the draft, will take his backup, Matt Breida. That's why it's called a handcuff. It's like they're connected. You only really want to handcuff guys you take very high in the draft, and you really only want to handcuff one player on your team. Backup spots in fantasy are super valuable, especially as bye weeks start kicking in. And if you know your league rules and your league settings, you might not have a very deep bench. So those spots are precious. So handcuff a guy who needs it. If you have Christian McCaffrey, you probably want Chuba Hubbard. If you have Saquon Barkley, if you use a high enough pick on him, you probably want Matt Breida.
Yeah, and I thought I big brained it last year and had Chubb and Hunt together, and then they both got hurt, and I was SOL.
Yeah,
running back. I mean, that's a situation that you could run into also.
And that's a trickier situation too, because Hunt has individual value. So deciding when to draft him gets tough because someone's going to take him at some point. Matt Breida is not going to be on someone's radar unless you got that fill in the blank in your league who takes Matt Breida just to not let you have Saquon Barkley. I know that guy. I've been that guy. So it happens. There's a lot of strategy involved there.
I think Pete's his whole world evolves around being the evil villain in somebody's life at different parts of time in their life. I don't even think he cares about fantasy. I just think he wants to ruin somebody's day when it comes to sports.
And I hide it with a wonderful laugh.
Right.
All right. BPA versus need is a big discussion in NFL drafts. You take the best player available, or you take the position you need. Call me crazy. Call me dumb. I'd rather have the best player.
You're crazy and you're dumb.
I am both of these things. I'd rather have the best player. Now, if you have a couple of guys who are like very close together, and you have fewer wide receivers on your team, and the receivers rated a spot lower, that's one thing. Don't take a guy who is not worth your draft spot because you have a need. That's how the Minnesota Vikings wind up with Christian Ponder at quarterback, because they're sitting there at number 12 with a guy who should have been a second or a third round pick at best goes 12th overall because they needed a quarterback. So best player available trumps need every time. Do some mock drafts. FantasyPros has some good mock drafts available. They are automated. You're not drafting against other people, but they mix it up. It's not always the same people going in the same order. The problem with doing mock drafts with actual people is most of them ditch after the second or third round. And then it gets automated in such a way that's unrealistic. Kickers wind up going in the 7th round, defenses in the 8th round, so to speak, because they're filling up starter spots instead. So FantasyPros, they do a lot. You can customize on FantasyPros. How many rounds, teams, what kind of aggression level you want, well, as far as quarterbacks go, stuff like that. It's a really great tool. Do those. It gets you prepared. Gives you an idea of when people are going to go.
It's literally practice. I mean, it makes sense because sometimes you get under the lights and you freeze, and you don't think it out. Practice a little bit. Makes sense.
And you want to know what the general public is thinking about a player. So if you want to take a chance, let's say Christian Kirk. You're in the 6th round, but you're pretty sure he's going to last to the 7th. Draft someone else, take him in the 7th. You know that because you're doing mock drafts. Keep an eye on bye weeks, but don't be beholden to them. If you draft a running back and another running back comes up and you have the same bye week, take the guy. Don't not take somebody who you think is better than everyone else on the board because you have the same bye week. If you have to eat a week, you can eat a week. If you have a good enough team, you can survive a loss. It's tough to go undefeated in fantasy. You're going to lose some games. Take the best player.
You said the words I was about to say. It's better to win 5 games with the better players and have them together on a bye week than worry about losing 1 week.
And if you're in a Dynasty league, completely ignore bye weeks because you're not going to make long-term decisions based on people having bye weeks. Stay up to date on the latest information. Josh mentioned earlier the ripple effect that injury on an offense can have when discussing Tampa Bay's center situation. During the season, coordinators get fired. Players don't get traded very often, but here lately in the NFL, it has been happening. When a coordinator gets fired, it changes the system on offense, and all of a sudden you have a running back who's not seeing the ball a lot. The coordinator getting fired could be in your favor. He may get the ball into his hands more. Could be the opposite direction as well. Keep an eye on injuries. guys who are constantly under injury report, but playing. It's not like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, but you're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And the out for 4 to 6 weeks tag may be coming soon. Lastly, understand the idea of scarcity. Quarterbacks score more than everybody else. They're the big headline names, but the scarcity is not there. You have 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL. That's always a thing. Very, very, very rarely do you see teams playing multiple quarterbacks in the same game. You have those 32 guys to choose from. Running backs, which take up more roster spots on your fantasy team than a quarterback does, offers fewer starting options. I'd rather have the running back that scores me 10 points a game than the quarterback that scores me 18 points a game, because I can find another quarterback that scores me 17 points a game, as opposed to having the 18-point quarterback and a 5-point running back. Scarcity is huge. That's why a guy like Travis Kelce in this scenario with FantasyPros is considered a top 10 overall player. The tight end is a scarce position, and he's one of the best at it. If we're talking about Travis Kelce 2 years ago, yes. But Travis Kelce now in this offense, he's well into his 30s. He's sneakily older than you might expect. Without the kind of attention that other players are getting, you can get Darren Waller from the Raiders, George Kittle from the Niners, Kyle Pitts from the Falcons. These are all very serviceable players. Dalton Schultz from the Cowboys, even Dawson Knox if you can stay on the field. Great name, by the way.
Awesome name.
And Mike Gesicki, Dolphins, would be another option. So that's our fantasy preview. We want you to be able to go out there, dominate your draft. This time you're not winning money from the sportsbook. You're winning money from your friends, which can almost feel better sometimes than winning money from the sportsbook. But all of this information does translate into what we're looking at in the NFL this season. We're going to do picks. We're talking about how to beat the book. Fantasy football is a great gateway to doing that.
So, Pete, I believe that your anti-coolant is running really, really hot. I just saw a piece of steam rise off your head coming out of your ears. I'm going to give you a second to take a breath. I'm going to take the reins for a second. So, you all have been listening, I would say maybe the first 5 minutes to me and Pete. 75-80% of the last hour of your life has been serenaded by Pete's voice, okay? And that's all by design. There's a reason for that. So over the course, probably since NBA Finals, since I started posting daily picks, me and Pete, like I said, we correlate. We put our heads together whenever we come up with these picks. My availability is a little bit more open than his to post them. That's why I post the videos. You would think that I'm the mastermind by as much as you see my face and hear my voice. Pete is an absolute encyclopedia of knowledge. It is fascinating. It is insane to watch him work. And as far as NFL, MLB, NBA, spreads, totals, all that stuff, me and him can put our heads together and come up with some great lines, some great bets, some great value. When it comes to individual player stats, I have not met a person ever, any sportsbook, any fantasy league, anywhere, that can just rattle off stats the way this guy can. And I begged him. I was like, you have to take the reins of this show. You have to control it. You have to educate the people. You have to feed them knowledge. And you did it beautifully, man. I mean, you crushed it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, steel trap kind of situation here with the memory. I am more of a long-term guy. I can't really remember what I did this morning, to be honest with you, but I can remember stuff in the long term. So I appreciate you saying that. I really would be thankful for anybody listening to agree with that, even to a slight degree. That is very nice. Thank you. The steam goes off my head because I'm a baldy. So back in the day when he had the hair, it wasn't so much the case. So.
All right, guys, that will wrap up our football fantasy preview. We'll be coming back next week. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do week 1 college football picks. Okay, it'll be about a week and a half in advance. We're going to follow that up with the week 1 NFL picks the following week. And then after that, we'll go probably 2 days a week, 1 recap and 1 preview. We're just so excited about betting. We just want to get the college football picks out next week.
As fun as future betting is, and it is fun, and we like looking into the future and trying to see what we're going to look at. That was week-to-week bets. Nothing beats that.
Right. So hope you guys learned something. Like I said, Pete just he did his thing today. So excited to listen to him. I learn a lot every time me and him have a conversation. It's been years and years and years, and I still learn a lot. He's a freak. He's insane.
Those are both absolutely true.
Hashtag JobCross65 if you guys are looking for us. We're on Spotify now. We're super excited about that. Pineapples don't go on pizza, which is a fact. At the Joshua Sharp on Twitter. Like I said, you can find us anywhere. Hashtag JobCross65. Like I said, I hope you guys learned something, man. There's a lot of information in this one.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll catch you next time.